Have you noticed how many YouTube videos now are generated completely in AI? AI is very clever, isn't it? You see the AI thumbnails and you can almost create anything you like. Anything your brain will think of, AI can seem to create it and make it look amazing. You can even have famous people put in their name and generate the picture of them in a certain situation. We played around with that yesterday, actually, just for a bit of a laugh. I said to Julia, I said, I've never played with one of these AI things, and there was a free version online, and I said to her, think of somebody famous and we'll do a little picture. So she said, oh, David Bowie. And I thought, oh, okay. So we did David Bowie and we had him jumping over the moon. And sure enough, there was a number of pictures that came up, David Bowie leaping over the moon or flying like this. And you could clearly see it was a David Bowie. It wasn't quite right. I mean, she said, oh, it's a bit different, but you could definitely identify it was David Bowie. Fair enough. And that was good. And the AI, I don't know if you've noticed also, but there's so many videos now, and I was told by a friend of mine that you can just plug in something, an AI plug-in, you can give it an idea, it'll write a script, it will record a voice that is almost indistinguishable from a real voice, and within seconds you've created a YouTube channel, which means that so many YouTube channels now are just complete AI. There's no one actually behind it. And people, real people, men and women people, are actually listening to that, and they're just listening to something that's been created by nothing, as it were, by digital AI, artificial intelligence. Well, that's a bit of a worry, isn't it? How do you now tell the difference between something real and something artificial? And I started to think, well, this is fascinating, isn't it? Because, you know, we've all got this so-called digital ID. We've got photographic ID, for example, a passport, driving license, and some other cards that you might need for various purposes to identify yourself. Well, presumably it's perfectly feasible now to just program in, create a passport photograph of me, would you? Type it in. Maybe you have to put in a couple of holiday snaps, and the AI engine will create a passport photograph of you, and you could just send it off to the passport office. And presumably, how would they know that that isn't a likeness of you anymore? And then you've got to ask yourself, if that's just been generated by AI, and it's not actually you sitting in front of a camera being photographed in the old-fashioned way, then who is it? Is it really just a likeness of you generated by AI, or is it a complete artificial version of you? A bit like the legal fiction, you might say. It's perhaps a legal entity, or it's a version of you, a virtual version of you, but it's not actually you, of course. But it wasn't even generated by you. You didn't even have to sit in front of a camera. And that's a bit of a worry, isn't it? That means anybody could create a passport picture of anybody they like and go, oh yeah, that's definitely me, because they haven't had to sit in front of a camera and do anything. They could put a moustache on themselves, or a different pair of glasses, or big curly hair, or whatever it was to match perhaps, you know, the image that they're then going to wear. Surely that is fraudulent, isn't it? Or is it? Doesn't it make any difference how it was generated? But it does make me think it kind of makes a mockery out of photo identification. And then I thought, well, hold on a second. What about when you're driving your car and you get one of those photographs taken of the car driving down the motorway and you supposedly have gone at the wrong speed? You know, the gantry on the motorway changes from 70 to 60 all of a sudden, and you've been caught off guard, or you've been thinking about something else, and your speedometer has crept up a little bit, and it's just gone over the thing, and it triggered the camera. You've not hurt anybody, there's no crime, no one's been injured, perhaps there's just you on the motorway at that stretch, nobody's really hurt, there's nothing being damaged, there's no injury, there's no loss or anything, but a camera has snapped you. And suddenly there you are, you've got this thing from the police saying, oh, we intend to prosecute you because you've done some speeding, you've gone over the speed limit and you've been a naughty boy or a naughty girl, depending on. And I thought to myself, but if they're just going to then, and you say, well, and they say, we need to know who the driver is, and you say, well, I'd like to have some evidence, please, that I actually was speeding now, I'm taking your word for it, you may not have even known, you see. And they say, oh, well, here we are, here's some photographic evidence. And they send you a picture of a car. And it might be a picture of your car, or it might be a picture of a car that looks like your car. And for all you know, it could be AI generated. I mean, what's to stop? If AI is that clever that it can generate famous people and it can generate objects, then why would it not be possible for the police? You know, we know that they're corrupt. We know that they're a business there for profit. They're no longer the way the police used to be run, to sort of help us and look after us. They're definitely there to try and extract every last penny out of us. They're in with the courts, they're in with the council. Why would they not just sit there and go, oh, yeah, just generate a few pictures, let's have a look, which car is this? Oh yes, take the number plate, put it in, generate it, put it on a speed thing. How could they prove otherwise? I mean, you would say, well, I like to have an actual real living man or woman witness, somebody who's actually seen it. And where's the crime anyway? Who was injured? Why is this an infringement? Why is this an offence? And who, to be honest, is offended by me going a little bit over the speed limit? Who is offended by that? There was nobody there. I haven't caused anybody an accident or any, you know, and they try and get you. But how could they prove that this was a real photograph from a speed camera and not something AI generated? I don't think they could, not in a court of law. And how would they prove unless they've got video footage? But now we know that videos can be faked. Of course they've been faked. The motion picture industry have been doing this for many, many years, faking all sorts of things for the entertainment of people going to the cinema to watch, I don't know, Space Odyssey or whatever it is. These days, and we know they use a lot of green screen. But if you can generate it instantly, how can you possibly prove anything anymore? Think of the ULEZ cameras, and they're taking pictures of vehicles and saying, you drove down this road. You can say, well, how do you know I drove down this road? That might be a fake picture. That may be generated on AI. It's so clever. Surely this undermines your normal, everyday, legal, if you want to have a legal system, the legal system. It must do, surely, because they cannot prove it. You would need at least a couple of witnesses to verify it, and not the police themselves, because the police or whoever is operating the camera and is collecting money from it has a vested interest to say, oh yes, that's definitely you, and please send the 60 quid or 120 or whatever it is amount of money. So I think whilst AI is very clever and very fun in many ways of creating things out of nothing, it must undermine a lot of that photo evidence stuff, and it must underline who you really are, the photo ID. I mean, you could make yourself look 10 years younger. And what about in things like online dating and all of that? You could make yourself look hunkier, you could make yourself look thinner, you could make yourself have more luxuriant hair. And when you're scrolling left and right, you go, oh yes, he looks like a nice person, or she looks like a lovely person. And then it turns out, of course, eventually you've got to meet up in real life and go, actually, you don't look anything like that. Your teeth suddenly seem immaculate. There are no lines under your face. In fact, that blemish has disappeared. Now, I know people could do that in Photoshop, but it takes a hell of a lot of effort and a bit more skill. But if you can just press a button on the keyboard and up comes a generated perfect version of you, then there's a sort of lying going on. This also worries me as we start to progress with deep fake as well, that YouTube channels, as I said at the beginning, can be created in AI. Soon you could be watching somebody who purports to be somebody like Richard Vobes or whomever it is, people that you may or may not trust, whatever, and suddenly it's not true. We may be watching more of that on mainstream media than we realise. You may be watching somebody who is an anchor on a news item telling you some information which may have been completely generated in AI that isn't true, telling you some frightening facts that have been happening in the world, and actually they're not true at all. They're not happening. It's all been generated. And how would you know? And your vibrations are made low because you're in fear. Oh my goodness, there's a war going over here, or there's a nuclear explosion happening over there. And you're seeing all this imagery and you're thinking, oh, it must be true, surely. And yet now we know that AI can create all these illusions and all this technical stuff so very cleverly, these photo images and video footage. How can you believe anything that you see that comes down a screen? You can't. Unless you see it with your own eyes, unless you witness it and you're there and you feel it viscerally happening in front of you. It just means now that actually even less is believable online. You won't be able to believe anybody, myself, anybody else, and know whether they're genuinely real or whether it's been just created in AI. This to me shows the importance of us as living men, living women, actually getting away from the screens and meeting up in real life, because at least then you can poke someone and you can go, are you real? Oh yes, you're real. I can smell your bad breath. I can see the cracks in your eyes. I can see your hair is actually ruffled. I can see that you're laughing, and I can feel the vibrations from you. I can feel your biofield. We need to get back into a real world where we actually are there, flesh and blood together once again, rather than relying on this artificial world that now has taken this great leap into an AI generated, is it real, isn't it real, an untrustworthy situation. And that's why I try and do as many talks as I can. People ask me to come and talk so that you can actually see I'm a real person. Well, I say person, a real man, rather than just somebody behind a screen. It is amazing how many people who do the YouTube channels who don't actually bother to turn up at various events or give talks or there so that people can actually see that they are genuine and not just some artificial creation. Bit of a worry. But I think it shows that we need to move away from screens and rejoin each other in real life.